DC Fandome, Battlefield 2042 beta, and some spooky Halloween treats. This is Triple XP.
Triple XP.
Welcome to the latest episode of Triple XP. I'm Shane. And this is Mike and Cheese.
Hello.
Hello.
So, boys, what we got on the cards today? Who's kicking us off?
Well, I'm going to be talking about DC Fandome this week. What about you, Cheese?
I'm going to present to you Cheese's top 5 horror movies to watch this October.
Ooh, spooky.
I've got a couple of little bits to go through, but it'll probably start off with the Battlefield. But let's go with DC first. That's the newest piece of news to come out.
Yeah, so it kind of kicked off last night for us as we record this. There was a lot of news. It was I'll just pull my notes up. So the main one I want to talk about is the Batman trailer. It's just incredible. It's amazing. It's so good.
It's pretty great.
It's this sort of like new, like gritty take. I know that word's like thrown around with Batman quite a lot, but they cast Robert Pattinson, the sparkly vampire Twilight guy, and like I'm all for him. He looks incredible in this.
I think he's
It
actually
really looks like
he's a solid actor too. Twilight's one of those things that just like to start off his career. I guess he was Cedric Diggory too, but like he just had a couple of roles, but like that made him incredibly famous. So he would never be in this position today without the success of those movies, good or bad.
yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to be one of his best roles. I know he's done some incredible stuff, like in the Lighthouse as well.
Yeah.
That was another one. But this Batman, it looks dark, it looks violent, and
Really violent.
yeah, in a good way. Just the cinematography and everything in the trailer just did it for me. It's like the use of like the colors and stuff. Had really good like tones in there.
It's got a very so for anyone who's listening who reads the comics, it's got like a very Frank Miller vibe to it, in that it's like a lot because his comics in the Batman universe, like the ones that he did, were much darker and really aggressive. And instead of like Batman, I think it was those ones where Batman actually started killing people at one point. So yeah, they're quite
Yeah,
dark.
he looks at that kind of that breaking point. He gets real angry in the trailer as well at one point. But it also kind of like with the villains and stuff, they look a bit more grounded and a little less
Cartoony.
like cartoony, yeah. And kind of similar to how they were done in the Arkham game series.
Yeah.
They're sort of like more punchy and realistic, and they're not as like wild and crazy, and they just have this like grittiness.
On the note
to them.
of what you saying about it feeling quite grounded, is one of the things that I like about this one, in that obviously the Batman trilogy of Christian Bale, that was quite a grounded, down to earth Batman series. But the one thing in that one that for me took away from it was the Batmobile. In that, yes, it's fucking cool, but also it's a tank. It's not
tumbler,
something that like you can just build in your garage. But the Batmobile that he's got in this one looks incredible. But it literally also looks like something you probably could build in your garage.
It looked like it was out of Fast and the Furious. That was my first thought when I saw it. I'm like, is that Dominic Toretto's car?
That's the one thing that Batman doesn't have: his family.
That's good. That was a good one.
That's
solid.
I'll give you that one.
At first, I was like, what are you talking about? And then I'm like,
But yeah, moving on to Gotham Knights was another game that we got. Well, I say another game, but a game we got some footage of, and it sort of announced the Court of Owls, which is another great sort of story arc for Batman. And although in Gotham Knights, Batman in that world he's dead, he died, and it's up to his sort of like proteges to take over and take down this Court of Owls, which I'm excited for because Court of Owls is one that's been sort of teased and hinted at a lot
I was
in
gonna
the
say,
previous games.
yeah, I thought
I'm
it was
torn.
announced a while ago.
But now they got the moment in the sun, so I hope they do pull it off, and I'm excited for this game just to see what it's like.
I'm torn with this one because I'm both excited and worried.
Yeah,
I'm excited about where they're going with it from a story point of view, but I'm a little bit dubious about the combat and actual gameplay from what we've seen so far, and the fact that because it's 3 or 4 player multiplayer, isn't it?
Yeah,
And so yeah, I just want to see a bit because what we saw yesterday was ultimately more like CG footage, like as in videos and whatnot,
Yeah.
and no more gameplay. So I'd like to see a bit more gameplay before I get too excited. So I'm a
yeah,
little bit on the fence at the moment.
yeah, certainly, and that's a reasonable place to be at the minute with this, without seeing gameplay or much gameplay. It's one there, but I'm just happy that Court of Owls has got their little moment in the
Yeah.
sun.
No, that's fair.
one thing I want to say
They're
about
great.
like Batman in general is like he's different than some of the other like intellectual properties that people have, like even Star Wars. Like you're either like fully invested in Star Wars from the beginning, or I mean, like let me rephrase that. Like with some Star Wars movies, I stopped caring, but I have seen every Batman movie, and like since they kind of reinvent it each time, it's kind of a double-edged sword because they could either do it really, really well or they could do it not so well. But like the not so well ones are still great because it's Batman. Like they might not be as good of movies as The Dark Knight, but they're also being compared to The Dark Knight, and that whole trilogy, well, not the entire trilogy, most of the trilogy was pretty damn good. And so we've been spoiled by that, but then that ruins expectations. We're like, this movie looks darker than The Dark Knight or the Dark Knight trilogy, if you ask me. I mean, just the whole like the color scheme and the cinematography, like everything looks super dark. And my only concern with this new movie is if having the Penguin and the Riddler as villains, at least that's all we know so far, like if that's going to make it a little too much or if it's going to set up. But I guess Dark Knight had Two-Face and Joker,
I mean, yeah,
but it was also a
It's
3-hour long movie.
It's going to be about how they introduce them as well, and that it appears this film's focus is more around the Riddler.
Yeah.
And is it just the fact that the Penguin just exists? He's just there doing his thing in the background and being a pain in the arse,
right.
whereas the Riddler is like the main focus. Much
Yeah.
like with obviously the Dark Knight, the focus was always Joker.
Yeah.
And the Two-Face side of it was very much like slotted in nicely, but it wasn't the core focus of the film.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the similar route they'll go down.
I hope so. If they
I
do it
think
right.
One solid thing that Batman always has, and like you're saying about all these different versions of Batman, is you can get a bad Batman, but the villains are also like a huge part of Batman.
Yeah.
And the villains are so strong that it's hard to get them wrong because they're so like likable and like literally any version of Joker, you kind of like them all in their own different ways, and
Yeah.
it's the same with all the villains in my opinion anyway. That the villains
I-
are just as strong as the hero in this.
I would
Batman.
actually say that it's part of the reason why, as a comic book character who has come onto the both in games and big screens, it's because of the villains that Batman has that he has been so popular. Like the fact that his films never really fail is because the villains are so good. Whereas you look at the Superman films and even some of the Marvel ones, some of the villains in those are
Yeah.
Pretty
weak.
weak.
Forgettable for
Yeah.
sure. Is Paul Dano playing Riddler? Is that who's playing him? I think it is.
Paul Dano is without seeing his face.
Colin Farrell, I think, is Penguin, but I couldn't remember if I think Paul Dano was announced to be Riddler a long time ago. But yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. What else has he been in? Because I know his face. But,
Prisoners is the movie I know him best from, which is an amazing movie. If you've never seen Prisoners, it's not really horror, so I didn't include it in my top 5, but that's an amazing movie with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. He was also in Love and Mercy, which you probably haven't seen. That's about the Beach Boys. 12 Years a Slave, Little Miss Sunshine, There Will Be Blood. Those are probably his biggest. He's a great actor. I think he's actually pretty underrated, but he's just, I mean, just from those movies I listed, he's played such different characters, especially in Prisoners. He plays like this handicap guy who they think is like abducting children. It's a really gritty thriller movie. If you've never seen that, you should 1000% put that on your short list of watch it.
It's on the list, man. It's on the list.
It's an amazing movie.
There was one other like big key thing that came out of DC Fandom as well, wasn't there?
I mean, there's a few things for me. Well, there's four altogether. There was the Suicide Squad, and that sort of that trailer. I thought it looked really fun. Like it looked really well done. The characters were funny and making me laugh in the CG that we saw. We didn't see any gameplay, unfortunately, so I can't really comment on that. But the Suicide Squad looked way better than the Guardians of the Galaxy little, buddy gang movie, whatever. It looked way more fun, way better written than what I've seen from the Guardians of the Galaxy game. Like this one, like just headed my list for that type of game where it's like, it could be. I don't know whether it's co-op or what, but
I don't think they've announced any of the gameplay mechanics yet. But the key thing for me when it comes to that game, again, I'm still a little bit on the fence, much like I am with Gotham Knights, because we haven't seen anything.
yeah,
But there's, unlike, for example, with Gotham Knights and with Guardians, is that the studio behind it is one that so far hasn't done wrong, which is Rocksteady. Obviously,
Yeah.
the Batman games, they always landed them, and they landed them extremely well. There was a real level of detail that they took with them. Gotham Knights is being done by the Warner Brothers Studios, which did the Arkham Origins, which was
Yeah.
the weakest of all of them. And then Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the Crystal Dynamics Studios, off the top of my head, who obviously did the Avengers game. No, that wasn't Crystal Dynamics, was it? That was
Square.
I can't remember who that
Enix.
was.
That was Square, wasn't it? Square Enix.
I think
Yeah,
so.
but I don't. I have to look. Stand by.
It's the joys of doing this while we're on a computer. Because let me fact check that before I say something stupid.
Yeah. So anyone that didn't catch it, I definitely urge you to go and watch the Suicide Squad trailer because it had great characters from the most recent movies as well. So there's Captain Boomerang, there's Harley Quinn, there's the shark guy. I can't remember his name.
King
The
Shark.
big shark beard. Yeah, there we go. And who was the other one? Who's the fourth one? I think it's Deadshot, right?
Yep. And then because
Yeah.
then I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw even yesterday on Instagram or something. It's like characters that we saw in the trailer, and there was also Wonder Woman, Superman, and Robin.
Yeah, so the tagline of this is "Kill the Justice League." So that's essentially the
That makes
plot
sense.
of the game is to fight the Justice League. It also has Brainiac as the main sort of overarching villain that's obviously controlling the Justice League.
Nice.
But yeah, so it just looks fun. Like I'm so into just the setting itself. Like Suicide Squad, they've been some of the funnest movies that I've watched in a while, in a good long time. So this looks just like more of that. So I'm made up with that, to be fair.
I feel like we got spoiled a little bit with like the Spider-Man game and Miles Morales, even though that one was short. But like the Avengers was the game that we all wanted that didn't really perform. So hopefully one of these next games will really be like, all right, they've figured out this formula, they've nailed it. It's gonna be worth the $60 or $70, and you can play online with your friends or whatever. And there's actually longevity to it versus paying $60 for Miles Morales and enjoying it for 15 hours and being done.
Yeah.
Okay, so I come back with answers. So Marvel's Avengers was developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Square, whereas Guardians of the Galaxy is being developed by Eidos Montreal but being published by Square. It's part of the same multi-game Marvel deal that Square have that's where obviously the Avengers game came out of. But Eidos Montreal have done some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, kind of a bit middle of the road with those games that they've made. Like the Tomb Raider ones are like good, solid games, but they're not special. Like they're just okay for me.
Yeah, they
That's kind of
definitely
what I'm
got.
expecting with Guardians of the Galaxy. Is just an okay game, probably an alright-ish story.
Oh, they did the Deus Ex games, which for me they were okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like, yeah,
They're
it's
okay. Yeah,
I haven't played any of those games.
a bunch of okay games.
the Deus Ex games are the sort of games that I play and then get bored of and don't ever finish. They're okay.
Yeah,
So
I mean
yeah,
that could be any game for me, to be fair.
well yeah, that's true.
But... the other big-ish one for me was a Peacemaker. So if you've not seen the Suicide Squad,
I haven't, but I at least know what you're talking about.
I
the
haven't
latest,
either.
the latest movie, there's a character called Peacemaker. He's played by John Cena, and he's basically got his own spin-off. I think it's a TV series.
HBO
Pretty sure
Max,
it
I
is.
think.
Yeah, yeah.
So it
Oh,
should
right,
be.
okay.
So that is an important piece, I think, too. That it's not like going to be on FX or something so specific that nobody cares. Like, well, I
Yeah.
guess DC doesn't have their own streaming service anymore, right? It is HBO Max.
It is HBO Max, yeah.
So they
Right.
kind of have the budget and the platform to kind of turn that into whatever they want. And like I said, I haven't seen that second Suicide Squad yet, but I've heard from friends about John Cena's character, and it sounds like it could make for a great show.
Yeah, it does look just like so much fun. Like more of the character in the film. Like if you've not seen it, I'm not gonna like
So
spoil anything.
I've not
obviously,
seen, but
so you both need to watch it. It's really fun.
well,
We
I am
recently
sold
watched it.
on Peacemaker by the fact that it's John Cena. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yes.
it.
So if you've seen him in any other of his like roles in like a comedy-ish setting, it's very similar vein. Like he's just you know, he is the joke kind of thing. He's not like one cracking the jokes. He just is the joke. But he plays that part so well. Like it's a real yeah. He just does it really well. Like yeah, definitely. But that was really it from the fandom for me personally. I don't know if Shane, you've got any others to add there.
No, I mean there was a load of trailers for some of their already running TV shows, wasn't there? There was a Batgirl trailer and a Flash trailer, but they're to be honest, I never really got into any of them, and they became, particularly the Flash one, became so convoluted with all the
Yeah.
different world lines and things. I just lost interest in trying to keep up with it all.
They released some
Yeah, they-
stills though for the Flash movie, didn't they? I thought I saw
Yeah,
a
they
couple
did
of those.
They did a very short teaser on Flash. Actually, that was another one that I forgot to note down. But it's basically like a Flashpoint kind of take, and the big thing for me is that it has Michael Keaton's Batman in it as like one of the multiversal sort of.
That's interesting.
That is very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I like that a lot.
I'm
There
kind of
was,
like interested in that just for Michael Keaton though. I'm not
Yeah,
too
nothing
bothered about
else.
the Flash.
Which is
Yeah.
brilliant. Which is brilliant though, because like what we saw out of Flash, especially in the Snyder cut. If I assume Mike watched it, Shane, I don't know if you did, but like the Flash scenes were much longer than they were in the original cut, and like half of it's slow motion. So like Flash was on screen for like 40 minutes when really it could have been like 13 seconds. But
Yeah.
Ezra Miller plays that character really well, and we've never seen a whole lot of him. So for them to give him his own movie with so many questions, putting in Michael Keaton's Batman was a genius move for a movie that most people are unsure of. But now they're like, well, what the hell are they going to do with him? Gotta see it.
Yeah.
Brilliant
Yeah.
move.
There was one other thing in Fandome actually that's worth mentioning. We got 10 minutes of Dwayne Johnson telling us about Black Adam to then show a clip instead of a trailer, which was weird, from the film. Don't know if you
Yeah, it was
remember
like
that.
a short teaser. Yeah.
I saw that was trending on Twitter this morning, but I haven't seen the actual footage yet.
You don't see much in the footage, in all fairness.
I'll just assume it's The Rock in a costume, and that's good enough for me.
Basically, yeah. I mean, that's another one that's probably going to be a good movie, but we'll just wait and see on that. They need to show us a bit more to get me excited, I think.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit more excited by that because I enjoyed Shazam quite a lot, and that's all part of the same lore, isn't it? And
Yep.
I don't know much about
Yeah.
Black Adam, but I know it's all like connected.
There was a look at the new Shazam movie too, I think, wasn't there? Or at least I don't know if it was a
but there
clip
were
or
only
if it was
like small
footage.
snippets of things and backscene,
Yeah.
like backstage kind of stuff, and there was a lot of that, and it's kind of like sifting through and finding the good stuff, like the Batman trailer, and Michael Keaton's Batman and the other Batman games, and basically everything that's Batman.
Just everything
They should
Batman.
just call it the Bat Dome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why we're all there.
basically, yeah. So yeah,
Well,
Batman was great.
Batman's great. That's it. That's episode over. Job
Yep.
done.
All right.
So,
Glad we cleared this up. See you later, guys.
Cheese, before we go into the Halloween stuff,
Yes.
if I'll just quickly cover the Battlefield 2042 beta. Did you? I know, Mike, you played it. Did you get a chance to play, Cheese?
I did not.
So it was the open beta. Was last weekend or the weekend before? I can't remember now. And yeah, I think it left all of us, particularly those who were very excited for Battlefield, with a saltier taste in our mouth than we were expecting to have.
Yeah.
I think is probably the best way to describe it. It wasn't bad by any means, but there's a lot of the changes that they've made that were like, I'm not sure how much I like this compared to previous ones.
Yeah, I mean, I played a good few hours on it, and it was just too buggy to be excited about. It was kind of like it kind of dampened my excitement more than heightened it. And I was so excited for Battlefield, like watching that first trailer that dropped. It was just incredible. They had all like the fan servicey elements as well, with like the Randazook jet swap thing and all that. But then the build that they dropped was an old build,
Yep.
and it was really buggy. And then they said that they've obviously fixed all of the stuff that's wrong with it, but it's kind of like that feels like video game market spiel. It's
Yeah,
kind of
'cause
like I'm just not buying it yet. I'm just not pre-ordering it yet.
exactly. If it's fixed, well, give us the build for the beta that is ready.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, why are
yeah.
you giving us the buggy? Here's your car. I haven't put an engine in it yet, but you know it will drive. It will get you
Yeah.
somewhere. If you push it down a hill.
But saying that, like the game itself seemed solid enough. There was a lot of like graphical glitches and stuff like that, but like it's Battlefield. It's really fun.
So there were some
But-
bits that personally I think need work. Firstly, the grapple hook gun thing. It's overpowered in what you can do with it. Seeing people like grapple hook from one end of a tunnel to the other end, and just
Yeah.
like flying around corners, and I've seen videos of people like using the grapple hook to literally like boost themselves off of a hill and just like fly across the map,
Yeah,
which
yeah, I've
is
seen that as well.
ridiculous.
I've seen someone jump off a building and then grapple hook onto the floor and then like slide along the floor at like 100 mile an hour. It's
Yeah,
just like
it's
some crazy stuff. But then that's kind of the fun of Battlefield. It's got this like kind of wacky, crazy element to it.
Yeah.
Like
and
it's-
I get that. I don't disagree with you there, but I just think that grapple hook's going to get very annoying. Very
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah. I think
Um,
there's like the hashtag of only in Battlefield would this happen kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like there are those moments in it that like we had a few ourselves where we were just when we were playing together and stuff. There was like, holy shit, this is fun. Like I had a fun time playing it, but I'm just hesitant because of the graphical glitches and everything was just so bad and it needs work. That build that we got was old. I get that, and it probably worked in a lot since, but it needs more work.
and the other two things I would mention around it is, firstly, I think I know it's a beta and they're only going to show very small amounts of information, but it would have really benefited from having two maps instead of just the one map, because that would have taken a lot of our attention away from a lot of the bugs if we had a little bit more to explore. Whereas because we just saw this one map, I think that was frustrating.
Yeah.
But also
Like,
that
to me, it wasn't a very good map either. It wasn't a very fun
no.
map.
It was a very open sniper map with just
Yeah.
lots of helicopters every 5 seconds. And the last thing, and I genuinely, and I read this online, and I was like, you know what, actually, that makes sense. The pistol syringe healing gun thing. I don't know if you've seen the stats. So they released all the stats from the beta around what was used and how much it was used and stuff. And compared to the other three pieces of kit, that one just literally was used like less than a third of all the others. It was barely used at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are just saying it's just not fit for purpose. Like no one wants to carry it because it doesn't do what you need it to do. And what
Yeah.
they're saying is maybe make it more like Doc's gun in Siege, in that it can revive you from a distance instead of just healing.
I thought that's what it was, and then I like shot it at someone and it did nothing while they were down. So I was like, okay, this is useless. Put this away.
Yeah, no, if it had a long range reviving tool, that would be much more useful, and I think it would get used a lot more.
Yeah.
Plus, a lot of people were saying they didn't want to play as a granny because obviously it was like
Theresa May.
Theresa May character. Yeah, it was an odd choice of character compared to all the other four that were in it. She didn't fit in with the rest of the clan. But no, it's enjoyable, and I mean, Cheese, when it does come out, if you are interested, I think it will be fun. But like Mike said, it's got a lot of work to be done on it to get it to where it needs to be by launch.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get it launch day just because I don't want to get stung again like I did with
Every game
Battlefield
ever.
1. Yeah, yeah. Like I don't want to get stung and people not be playing it in like a week's time sort of thing.
Mm.
So I'm gonna wait, but I do want to mention like the one sort of crazy Battlefield moment that I had was there was this sniper and he was trying to hide. He had his full camouflage gear on, but he had he was like lying on the ground, and I spotted him pretty easily because he had a giant parachute just still above his head, even though he was just lying on the ground. It's just like that for me. It was like, yeah, I'm not playing this anymore. I'm done. Like it was so broken.
I feel like I'm to the point too where I will never pay for a shooter again, especially when Halo's coming out on Game Pass, and then we get stuff like Splitgate, which is free, which I still think is a fantastic game. One of the games though that was free with PlayStation Plus this month was a game called Hell Let Loose for PS5, and I'm like, oh, this would be cool. It's like World War II looking game, so I downloaded it, got all excited for like some sort of short campaign. Nope, it was all online and it was trash. You could run in slow motion, you could maybe shoot a gun. There was like no radar. It was an absolute shit show. Horrible game. I was surprised anybody was playing it. But if somebody would have paid $60 for that game, you'd probably just like throw your PlayStation 5 out a window and call it a day because it was awful.
I actually,
Wow.
I kind of enjoyed that game when I played it.
What?
I thought it was all right. I thought it had like a slower paced.
Yeah, slow as in like this is how fast you run.
Yeah. But like
I mean,
I get it. It's not like a Splitgate where you're running around and jumping and all this like crazy stuff. It's just
It was just so
like
slow. It's like, do I have to load a musket too? Like what? Like at what point does
Yeah.
this game like get any better? And I played for like 2 minutes, died once, landed a couple shots, and I'm like, delete. No thanks.
yeah. I mean, I did the same, but like I enjoyed what I played. Man.
If it's free, you gotta at least
Yeah.
try it. But that game
Yeah.
had no replayability, and I had zero interest in it whatsoever. So I played Splitgate.
What I enjoyed about this though is, Cheese, you went on it, went, yeah, I don't like this, delete. Mike went on and went, yeah, I like this, delete.
Yes,
I enjoy this
Yeah.
game. I'm still going to uninstall it.
Yeah, I've got a weird relationship with just multiplayer games at the minute. I've just got no chuck for them whatsoever. I think I'm just in the mood where I just need to play single players. Like I'm just that age in my life. I can't keep up with the young thumbs of the world anymore.
No, I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah,
I literally, anytime I log on at the moment, all I want to play is Lost Judgment and just live in my
Yeah.
ridiculous world of kung fu detectiveness and not have to deal with other people.
Mm.
So, Cheese, horror films. Halloween.
Tiny Notebook.
Tiny Notebook. All right.
It's returned.
So my favorite holiday is Christmas, and my wife's favorite holiday is Halloween, and that's why we got married on Halloween. Our wedding reception is this Halloween because of COVID. But when Halloween and Christmas get combined, that's like my favorite thing too. Like those are my favorite go-to horror movies. Like Nightmare Before Christmas isn't really horror, so that's not on this list. But this is my top 5 horror movies that you should watch this month. In the next, I guess, week and a half, 2 weeks that we have until actually Halloween's 2 weeks from today, at time of recording. All right.
Just before you get into the list,
Yes.
what is it about horror that you enjoy so much?
Well, I would say in the beginning I didn't, but all I've seen in the last 5 years with my beautiful wife is horror movies. She's a horror aficionado, and she she's seen everything from the horrible, stupid, shitty movies on Amazon Prime to the newest whatever. Like that's just what she gravitates towards too, and I'm starting to like them for two reasons. One, if it's a bad movie, then it's just fun. Like you got to take it for what it is. You've already decided to sit down and watch this hour and a half long movie. I'm usually laughing and like that's so stupid. And Becca's like, "Oh, I liked it. It was great." I'm like, "No, you didn't." She just doesn't disagree with me. But anyway, on the other side is when there's a great horror movie or it's original or my wife listens to a lot of podcasts about movies, so sometimes when she listens to those, I kind of like just hear bits and pieces, and they break down bits of like specific scenes and how they made that in 1982, and you're like, oh my god! So then you watch it with that lens, that in mind, and it changes things. Which leads me to, if you've never seen Movies That Made Us on Netflix, they just came out with 5 or 6 new episodes on Friday, and they're all horror. So, Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, RoboCop, Aliens, the second Alien movie, and there's another one or two also, but we've watched a couple of them so far, and they're pretty fantastic. I love that series. Same with the Toys That Made Us. They're just good little fun watches. But all right, top 5. Number 5. So this is from 5th to 1st. First is my favorite. Number 5 is a Christmas horror movie called Black Christmas from 1974. It's kind of one of the first horror movies that used like a handheld approach for the cameras. It's basically takes place at a sorority house, and it's Christmas break, and sketchy things are aloof. Things are happening. Sketchy things are happening. People are missing. It's just a good movie, and it's not like an amazing storyline, but it's so original for 1974, and it holds up so well that they've done a remake, I think in 2006. I don't know if that was similar to the original story, but the one that came out in 2019, I think it was, is an actual re-envisioning of the 74 classic. But this is a great one to watch, even around Christmas time, because it takes place in this huge house with all these decorations and the Christmas trees and the snow, and it just is a very like a very atmospheric, like everything is just so well done, and it's a very gritty looking movie too, because it's 1974. Not a lot of special effects or anything. It's mostly just scares, not jump scares, but things are happening and you don't know what, and you're intrigued. Number 4, Mike, I know you're going to like this one, Gremlins from 1984. Not all these are Christmas movies, but this one is definitely a Christmas movie. I think it takes place on the week of Christmas or Christmas Day, even part of it, maybe Christmas Eve. Love this movie. I watched it on the plane home from a trip a couple months ago. Like, I just love this movie. It was presented by Steven Spielberg, but it was written by Chris Columbus, who's done all sorts of stuff from Home Alone to the first couple Harry Potter movies. So I didn't realize that he wrote that, I don't think, until I looked it up earlier today.
This is one I can kind of like speaking on. Like, I wouldn't really class it as a horror as such, but it's like, I mean, it is.
It's family horror. Like it's digestible horror for like most people who aren't like into Friday the 13th.
Yeah, but the comedy elements of it just overpower that, and it's just like this hilarious movie, and it kind of fits into that first bracket for you.
Yeah. And comparatively, it's a lot more horror than number 2. Because number 2 comes away from the horror completely and just goes full on comedy.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that like you can say Gremlins, and that was 1984, and people still know what you're talking about. You can still buy a Gizmo toy at the supermarket here, or there's that Mountain Dew commercial right now, at least here, with the guy from Gremlins grown up.
The sex gremlin.
Mike's got a gremlin that he does something with. Like people are still interested in it all these years later, and like this was 8 years before I was even born, and it's still like one of my favorite movies. And it's an easy horror movie to watch. It's nothing. you don't feel gross after watching it or anything.
You might after the second one. Feel a bit
Yeah.
gross, but...
Yeah.
You might.
Yeah. But I heard rumblings of like a third movie.
I was wondering
don't
about
know
that too.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is, and they were bringing back like old cast members and stuff like that. But
Interesting.
yeah, I'd be cinema.
It'd
I'd
be a
there.
good time for it, yeah.
Yeah.
As long if they did it, Gizmo would still have to be puppeteered and not CGI.
Yes.
That's where they would go
Agreed.
horribly, horribly wrong. Like people are seeing this for nostalgia. It'd be like if Batman was suddenly CGI entirely. It's like
Yeah.
no. He's got to be in a costume, and that's where like this is kind of off topic, but like the Hobbit movies went so wrong was CGI almost everything compared to Lord of the Rings, which costs way more money probably. Well, actually, CGI is probably more expensive than 1,000 orc extras. But if you're gonna redo it now, keep it old school and make a cool robot.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
Exactly.
All right, number 3, Midsummer from 2019. This one is about some college kids that take a trip and they go to... Where do they go? The Netherlands? I don't remember exactly. I'll pull it up. But it has Florence Pugh in it. I love Florence Pugh. It's a great movie. It's from the same guy. I think it's Ari Aster that did Hereditary. And if you've seen Hereditary, it's not super horror, but it's like dark satanic things are happening in the background and very graphic things happen like just in these people's lives and make it seem like everything is not so great, and it's not so great, but like they show it in like a horribly dark and brutal way. Midsummer 2019, Ari Aster, and it just says, oh, Sweden. Yeah, that's right. Great movie. They go to this place. They're doing like a research project for their senior thesis or something in college, and they end up in this like commune, and it's kind of cultish. And again, I can't really say much about these movies without giving things away, so I'm just going to say weird shit's happening. But it's a great movie. It's a great movie, and opposite to Hereditary, which was very dark, this one is a very cinematically beautiful movie, very colorful, but then just the content of it, the actual like what's happening is just pretty really dark. But it's a nice like opposite, like I've always said you're not an art student unless one teacher says juxtaposition for every kid's critique. And so like juxtaposition of the dark and the light is a very good balance for this movie. Number 2, Nightmare on Elm Street, the original from 1984. This is my favorite slasher movie just because Freddy Krueger is such an interesting character, and versus Jason or those other people, he actually talks, and he's such a specific character where he can say the most vile, disgusting things, and you're like, yeah, get him. And then like sometimes you're like you don't get super attached to the characters. You're almost interested to see how they're gonna get killed. And the first one is great because they do this. This is a great episode of Movies That Made Us too to watch. How they talked about they wanted to make the production look like they were kind of slipping in and out of these dream sequences and meshing it with real life. So like one of the first scenes is she's sitting in a desk in a classroom. She looks over and there's somebody in a bloody body bag, and you can just see their face. And then they get like dragged out of the room with like this blood streak across the floor. And then they call her name and she snaps out of it, and that body bag's not actually there. But you're like, holy crap. So it's basically just, if you haven't seen it, it's like kind of a boogeyman that kills people in their dreams.
Like I haven't seen any of the Friday the 13th movies, but I know exactly what they're about, and like, cause I think it's just so
you know exactly what they're
like,
about.
Yeah.
In that you've just quoted the wrong movie.
You did say Friday the 13th.
Not Friday the 13th. Sorry. What's it called? Like,
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
But two very different films.
Yeah.
It is definitely one of those horror movies where you don't really watch it for the story. You're just watching it because you know it's going to be a little brutal and there's going to be a lot of violence and people are going to get killed. But it's one of those standalone classics which they've tried to remake and re-envision, and kind of just hard to do. It was done so well in the 80s that it's held up, and we're still talking about it.
So I, opposite to Mike, I actually love Nightmare on Elm Street to the point that I have the full DVD box set of every Nightmare on Elm Street film, and they, particularly as a teen, they were like one of my favorite go-to slasher films to watch. And I love how complicated and unnecessary the story is across the first 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So unlike a lot of like all of these sort of films, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street, they all have like an overarching story
Yeah.
that kind of intertwines them, but it's really fucking loose. And Nightmare on Elm Street does the same thing. So the first one, you can watch it as a complete standalone, and that's fine, and it'll be fine. But then as you start to watch the ones after that, they all start to intertwine, and there's like this
Yeah.
really long, convoluted story.
Especially the
And one
first
of
and
my-
the first and the third, and then the second one's kind of a standalone, and the second one has
The
all
second
sorts
one's
of.
not great.
It's the second one's so bad. Like if
The
you watch
worst
it,
of all of them.
Mike, you definitely have to watch the second one because we'd have all sorts of things to talk about. There's such a, oh man, it's bad.
The thing with Nightmare on Elm Street that that always drew me to it is that the deaths in it are so well thought out. They're like if you think about how like the deaths in Saw, for example, are really clever. Well, that's like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of set the standard for clever deaths, but being
Clever
like,
slasher deaths. Yeah.
yeah, they're
blood
just
deaths.
so clever in the way they do things, and a lot of the time, especially after the first one, and when it starts to go into some of the later ones, the deaths kind of link in with the person, so it's like, so it actually is their dream,
Yeah.
but then their dream gets twisted in a way to hurt them. So I think it's the third or fourth, where there's like a girl who like dreams that she can be on telly, and she wants to be on like primetime TV as a presenter, and then in her dream the TV flickers, she walks towards the TV, and Freddy's arms come out the TV, grabs her, and just shoves her head into the TV, so that she becomes the actor she wants to be by dying. But my favorite Freddy moment of all of them, and this is a comical one, not a it's not a great moment, it's just fucking hilarious, is so at the in part of the fourth or fifth one, I always forget, they basically learn to how to control the dreams a little bit, so they can control themselves in the dreams, and so they learn to give themselves like powers, essentially not superpowers, but like they just learn to be able to manipulate their dreams, as well as, because Freddy manipulates their dreams and they learn how to manipulate them back.
That's the third one. That's Dream Warriors.
It's so there's a kid in it who is in a wheelchair in the film, and then in the dream world he becomes like this wheelchair wizard.
Yeah.
And it is amazing.
That is a pretty good one. And
Absolutely amazing.
that's my wife's favorite Nightmare on Elm Street, but I didn't love it because they don't really get their powers until like 20 minutes until the end, and then they just rush through it. But there are a couple of amazing scenes in there, like kills, that are super well done and fascinating. And even though it's the 80s, you're like, oh my God, that was very imaginative and terrifying. But Dream Warriors is a fun one.
And I think the one after Dream Warriors, the fourth one, is super imaginative in the way that it adjusts the story so that they can make the deaths even more convoluted by not necessarily having them in the dream world, which was cool.
Yeah. All right, number
Great
one.
films.
Number one, drum roll. I don't know if you can hear that. The Thing from 1982. John Carpenter's The Thing.
What a classic.
I love this movie. Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, the diabetes guy. There's a couple others I can't really think of that are like super famous. Kurt Russell's the main one. It's like this research team in Antarctica, and they found like a down chopper of Swedish people or something, and they go to investigate, and they get stuck in a storm, and then things just go wrong again. But again, 1982, awesome movie. There's a couple of scenes where like the monster is done in stop motion, and that was one of them that I heard on a podcast where they talk about they use like melted bubble gum and all this stuff, and you're just like, oh my God. So watching those scenes, it's just such a great movie. Again, what is it? 40
It's quite a unique movie in its setting, that it was kind of like
the snow
mimicking type of monster, and
yeah,
it's all set in the snow and stuff like that. Like
And it kind of
It's a
mixes.
really good game as well that they brought out, like
Yeah,
on the PS2, I think.
PS2. Yep.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of mixing kind of like the claustrophobic feeling of being stuck inside, mixed with like your
Mm.
kind of distrust of others and this shape shifting monster thing. I guess that's the best thing to call it, is a thing. Uh, but it's just so well done, and like I said, it takes place in like an Antarctic research base, so everything is very white, very cold, and then a lot of the kills are over the top, blood and red and fire, and it's just a really well done movie
Fantastic
and
film.
like a classic. It's got to be one of the top 10 horror movies of all time, but it's my favorite one. That's my top
It is a
5.
fantastic film.
It's a good list. I've got some homework as well.
Yeah, it's a really good list. So
Yeah.
while we're on the topic of horror movies, I actually wanted to raise one, and I imagine you probably will have seen it then, Cheese, if your other half is very much into horror movies. So we just watched, literally finished today, the 3 Fear Street films on Netflix.
We watched the first one, and I didn't watch past that, but I'm sure my wife
I
did.
actually really enjoyed them. They're not fantastic by any means. I'm not out here saying they're like the Thing level of horror
Yeah.
films. They're not
They're fun.
by any means.
They're fun.
Yeah.
That's there's a huge divide in horror these days where it's like could be nominated for an Oscar like Get Out or Hereditary or something, and then there's the Fear Street type movies where it's like if you like horror, it's going to be a middle of the road movie, but you're going to be entertained for an hour and a half. There will be some cool scenes, and the story's probably going to have some plot holes, but you're not going to think about it that much because that's not what you're watching it for. So
Yeah, and it's got a pretty decent story. The story spans across all 3 films. It is a literally to be continued at the end of each film, so it is a continuous story. It's not loose linking; it is 100%. And the thing I liked about it, so each one's set in a different time. So the first one's set in 1994, and it very much plays out like Scream, for example. It very much plays like a late 80s, early 90s slasher flick. And then the second one is set in 1974 or 76, 74.
78.
78. It's one of the 70s. But that one's set in a camp, like a school camp. And again, because it being set in the 70s, and it tunes into that Friday the 13th style of slasher film, and goes back and the way that they portray the whole film very much goes back to that sort of style, and it changes up a lot. And then the last one is set in 2 zone eras. It's mostly set in 1666, but also in 1994. Like there's a bit of both. And again, because it's set in 1666, they completely change, and it becomes a bit more of a sort of mystery thriller element to it, with like dark rituals and that sort of stuff. Instead of it being a slasher, it's more about like towns not understanding shit happening, and then start like witch hunting and that sort of style of film. But they're based on books by R.L. Stein, which obviously you'll all know from the Goosebumps books that most of us grew up with, and that was kind of the reason why I wanted to watch it, because I was like, oh, I fucking love Goosebumps, and this is an 18 plus film made by the guy who wrote Goosebumps. This will be pretty fun.
I did watch one movie recently too. It was a new one. It was oh geez, what's his name? Why can't I never remember these things? It's a new movie on HBO called *Malignant*. It was done by James Wan, who did the Paranormal Activity and Saw movies, I think. Insidious.
I've seen it.
Yeah, he
I
did.
haven't watched it.
He did Saw, Conjuring. Maybe he didn't do Paranormal Activity. Saw. That's what I was thinking. It's trash. Don't watch it. It's so bad.
Okay.
We love
I
this.
didn't wa- I didn't
I've
ban
seen all 8, 9 Saw movies, and like some of those are fun. Like you just watch them because it's gonna be gross. And this one was just trash. It was so stupid. It was an hour and a half. So we watched it because we're like, oh, we won't be out too much of our lives if we watch this stupid movie. Where's the? It's just like the movie pivots even up until the last 15 minutes, and then it ends in a shootout with guns. And I'm like, of all climactic endings to like a horror movie, zero of them use guns, especially if it's the villain or the monster or whatever. So it was pure trash. I'm seeing what IMDb gave it, a 6.3 out of a 10 and a 51 out of 100 Metascore. So like middle of the road. My wife said she enjoyed it, but that was because I said I hated it. It's just not. It's not good. We did see Candyman 2 recently also, and Candyman almost went on my list. Probably be more like a top 10, top 15, but another great slasher from the late 80s, I think. Candyman 2 was produced, I think, by Jordan Peele, so you kind of had high expectations given Us and Get Out, and it
that's
wasn't.
the pedigree there. But
Yeah, so we were super excited from when they had announced it, and then it got delayed because of COVID. So we went and saw it in the theaters, and it was a decent movie for an hour and a half. Very socio-politically charged, just because of the nature of Candyman taking place in the projects. It's if you like Candyman, the original, you'd maybe want to see this one. But it was another movie that just like looked very well done, but the story had lots of holes. They'd introduce weird things and never kind of work it out. And the ending was also a little tacky, but we see a lot of horror movies, and I'll probably talk a lot about horror in future episodes as I watch stuff. But it'd be cool to see, like, Mike, if you haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street, to bring that back for one of the next episodes before Halloween or something and see what you think. Because some of those classics are classics for a reason, and some movies like
100%.
Malignant should just never happen.
yeah, it's on the list. But I just wanted to go back to something you said there about going to the cinema to watch like Candyman. Like how was the cinema experience for you? What like watching horror in general in the cinema? Because for me, like we've seen a few horror films in the cinema. One was the best cinema experience of my life. The other one was the worst. So it's like I don't know. I was just curious how it was for you.
I have a tough time with horror because, like, I'm not really I'm not afraid of the boogeyman type stories. I'm like, if they made a movie about student loans, I'd be crying. But like, it's the more realistic stuff, like cancer and that kind of stuff, that kind of gets to me a little bit more than any monster does. So Candyman as an experience wasn't super terrifying. There were a couple of scenes that were incredibly graphic and very well done. Like there's this scene where he goes into like this bathroom, or the Candyman goes into this bathroom with these like high school girls, because basically you summon Candyman by saying his name 5 times or something in a mirror, and then he shows up and kills you. And these punk ass kids were like, "We're not afraid of Candyman," and of course, great. That's by far the best scene in that entire movie. But
Unlike other killers, he seems like a really easy one to not get killed by. Just don't say his name.
Just say it 4 times.
you're right. It's kind of the dumbest way to die. So that cinematic experience, it was decent. It was maybe better to see on the big screen versus like watching it on a streaming service. But I will say the best theater experience I've ever had was seeing Don't Breathe in the theater. That was when was that? That was
Mine was really similar with the what's the one where I've forgotten the title name
You
now.
think in a quiet place?
Yeah, Quiet Place. Like that was just the tension was just like you could cut it with a knife. Like you could hear people like silently trying to rustle to get the popcorn and like chewing it quietly and stuff like that. And you could hear all these things, and like usually that's annoying, but with this it was like, holy shit, they're gonna like they're making noise. And
so this one came out in 2016, and Quiet Place came out, I think, the next year. Why didn't it come out? Quiet Place. Isn't that what it's called? A Quiet Place?
yeah,
I've seen the movie. 2018. So this was 2 years before. So this is the movie where the 3 kids break into the blind guy's house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I've seen this. This is a great movie.
It's so good. And in the theater, it was amazing. I think we were probably one of 25 people in the theater, but there's like almost zero score in the background. So some of the scenes, it's like you feel like you're having a panic attack because it's so quiet, and like you feel like you stopped breathing and you just hear nothing. And then like they're kind of creeping towards like where they think they're going, and the guy's there and they don't know. Like it's just It's a
Yeah.
it's a fun watch, and it's not like lots
Like
of jump scares or anything by any means. It's more just if you kind of find yourself in that house with them and lost in that silence, it becomes terrifying.
yeah, it's with those two movies in particular. It's more like the tension building
Yes.
that, and then it's like that's the payoff is how it builds that tension, and its use of like audio or lack of audio
Yeah.
as well. Is a great one.
Yeah, where you could hear yourself breathing if you were like actually
Yeah.
breathing. Like it was
Yeah,
so tense, and it's just that's a great movie to see in the theater.
yeah.
On the note of great movies to see, just before we tie up the episode, Mike has a film that he's finally watched this week.
Yeah, we're talking anime. So I've finally watched after numerous recommendations, seeing it like almost every other scroll on TikTok saying that this is the best anime to watch. I watched Your Name, and I don't know if you've seen this, Cheese. I know.
I just
Shane,
wrote
you
it down.
like, yeah. So yeah, Your Name is a story. The film's about an hour and a half long, maybe a little bit longer. It's a story about a boy and a girl. One lives in sort of like Tokyo, main sort of city, and then the other one lives out in the boonies, as it's described. And when they fall asleep, they basically body swap. So the boy goes into girl's body, girl, and the boys, and then they just kind of live that day out as that other person. And it gets like more and more complicated, and they get to sort of understand each other a lot more. And it's just this like really beautifully well told story. It's super super wholesome.
It
And
is stunning as well. It's a stunning
yeah,
anime.
it's really like beautifully drawn, well animated, which is the one thing about anime that is like a key for me is like it's got to be well animated. Which most are, to be fair. Like most are good, but like this one is like something special. It's really good. It has some really like touchy moments in it as well. And
So
I'm
it's
like the cynical type of person that doesn't give a shit. And this got me like I was close to tears at certain points. Like it really did.
I'm pretty sure this
pull on the
actually
old heartstrings.
made me cry when I saw it in the cinema.
Yeah, I was close, man. I was
Pretty sure it
close.
did. So the guy who made it, Makoto Shinkai, it's seen as like currently his best work. It's seen as
Yeah.
like the pinnacle of his works. So he's done quite a few animes. The two I would advise that I've seen of his that are loosely linked to Your Name because they're set in the same universe, although as I say, very loosely, is The Garden of Words, which is on Netflix, at least in the UK. So The Garden of Words is set before Your Name, and it basically is about a kid who skips school a lot, goes to this like beautiful garden and sits there, and there's a woman who goes and sits there, and they just get to know each other, and it is literally just a story of them getting to know each other better. But the kid in that story is one of the teachers in Your Name, so
Okay,
that's
so they
where the
are
loose
linked like
link
that.
is.
Yeah.
And then so that one was made before, and then the other one which is his newest film, is called Weathering with You. So Weathering with You is after Your Name, in that the main female from Your Name with the bow, she is seen in Weathering with You as an adult working in Tokyo. And
Okay.
that one's about it follows a similar sort of idea as Your Name, in that it's sort of a romance story that has a twist involved in it, but this one's been specifically around the weather
Yeah.
and potential flooding of Tokyo. But again, it's a really good film. It's not as good as Your Name in my opinion, but I would 100% advise watching both of them.
No, just off the back of Your Name, like I'm 1,000%. Like, I've just wrote them down. Like, they're on the list. They're getting watched. 100%. Your Name was spectacular, and just to note on the music of it as well, like the score, like all the way through is just phenomenal. It's so good. It made me want to buy a piano. Like it's that nice. It's like-
Yeah, it is so
Like,
good.
straight onto Amazon after watching it. Like, how much is a grand piano? Where
so
can I
fu-
fit it in my house?
I 100% do that. Say I own a violin. I don't know how to play violin, but I watched a movie one time. I'm like, well, it's only $50. So I do that a lot.
On a future episode, I am gonna come to the episode with a selection of music-based animes, because there's some really beautiful, heart-wrenching music-based animes that have like fantastic scores, like Your Name does, like weaved into them. And Your Name is the only anime where I've ever gone out and bought the novelization of it as well.
Yeah.
So there's two novelizations of it, the actual story itself, and then they did a second one, which was called Your Name Another World, and it was basically the exact same story but told from the perspective of all the side characters, as opposed to from the perspective of the main characters. So you got to see how the world developed around them, and Michael understands better having seen it. You got to see how the world developed around them while everything was happening,
Yeah.
which is interesting. But yeah, top quality anime that.
So yeah, so that kind of leads nicely onto wrapping the episode up. And what's happening next episode is we're going to be doing a beginner's guide to anime for the next episode. Jesus, writing this down.
Making notes. Well, I'm the beginner, so I actually have things to talk about there. If we did a top five, if we did top 5 favorite animes, I think I've only seen 5, so I would just have to order those. But
I feel like I'm going to be leading a lot of the next episode.
yeah,
I'm pretty new to it, but who better to write it than beginners themselves?
no, exactly. That's a great point, because like I told you before, I was talking to one of my brothers, and they're like, "Oh, have you watched this new Netflix show?" I'm like, "No, man, I'm too busy watching anime." And he goes, "Are you kidding?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "Well, why are you wasting your time?" And I said, "Well, someday I will convince you that anime is worth watching, and I will give you a list of reasons." He goes, "I'd love that conversation, because there are so many people that I know that watch anime, and I would never expect them to be interested in that." So it'd be a great conversation to have, and I'll just send him a link, and I've talked to him about it again.
Well, it's funny because me and Helly had like pretty much this conversation where she was like, "I don't get anime, like I don't understand it," and I was like trying to explain stuff like that was going on in the episodes that I've been watching and things like that, and it's just like it's more than just the big titty anime schoolgirls, like
Mostly.
it's more than that. yeah like the ones that Shane's not watching anyway.
Yeah.
I will bring a lot that will make you cry next week. There's some fantastic like you say animes out there, and I'm well up for doing a beginner's guide to anime. And I think you'll be surprised actually when we start going through this as to the different genres I have watched, and some of the ones that I would put up there as some of the best animes I've seen. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Ballpark, just a ballpark number. How many different animes do you think you've seen, Shane?
How many like,
for me
shows I've seen? I couldn't list it.
Like you think like you've seen like 100 in over the last 25 years?
I know the first anime I watched, I was about 13 years old, and I've pretty much watched anime consistently since then.
So probably like well over 100 easily.
Oh, easily over 100. I've probably watched over 100 in the last year, let alone.
Jesus Christ. How do you have time for that? I don't have a life and I don't have time for that.
You make it work.
Prioritize.
But yeah, we'll talk about that more next week though.
Yeah. So that was the episode. Join us next week. We have a planned episode, which is great. It'll be releasing the normal time around Halloween, so we'll maybe have some spooky talk as well. So yeah, you can follow us all on Twitter. Our handles will be like here below at some point.
I guess they are now. Now I have to. Jeez.
But yeah, so thanks for watching, everyone. Please give us a subscription, follows, all that business, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
XXD.